To start off, before we see RBVM in action, um, the main focus area which Chris was adhering to is the aggregation and prioritization piece. That's where Ivanti Neurons for risk-based vulnerability management and ASPM, these two products come into picture. Okay, so when we talk about the ingestion of data, so starting from network vulnerability scanners to SAST and DAS tools, as you can see, and even ticketing systems, like even including Ivanti Neurons for ITSM, we have, I think, around 70 plus integrations available in Ivanti Neurons for RBVM and ASPM. So, but the real value is once the data is ingested, as you can see here, I'll try to show you using this ransomware funnel. So this is one of the dashboards available in the product, right? So once the data is ingested from these connectors, you can be using a Qualys, Rapid7, or even a Tenable security center. So once from these various sources, the findings and the hosts and the application data is ingested, what you get is a very prioritized view of these findings and vulnerabilities. If you see, most of the time goes for security teams into normalizing this data, triaging through it, and at the same time identifying what is critical and most important, not just in terms of the standard CVSS score, which doesn't take into context your organization's risk requirements. Very contextual data is not available if you go by mere CVSS scores, right? Because it is an industry level metric that organization specific context is not available. So we are going to discuss few things here. For example, again, coming back, let us look at this example of a ransomware funnel. Okay, so uh, in your organization, starting with total findings of around 900K plus ransomware findings, if you see how the prioritization functionality in the product narrows it down to those with specific RCE, as in remote code exploits or privilege escalation exploits, because these are the ones which are of high risk. They can be triggered remotely by hackers taking control of your systems and encrypting them, right? And within these, also Ivanti Neurons vulnerability KB has threat feeds coming on what are the trending ransomwares. So basically, if you see from 900K plus, 912K to be specific, it has narrowed it down to 633 findings. So if you click on that, it will take you to the list view, which shows all the host findings, where you can go through them. But ultimately, when you have to take an action in terms of remediation, what you can do, so using the integration present between Ivanti Neurons for RBVM and patch products, you can directly assign them to an existing patch group, or you can even create a new patch group. So I'm going to use for this demo purposes, there is an already existing patch group I have created. So I'm just going to add these to that patch group. So now what would happen is these findings would be mapped to the relevant patches by your organization's patch admin. They're going to be tested and the patches are going to be applied. So what you have seen right now is with a few clicks, you have taken high risk ransomware vulnerabilities in your organization's environment and you have assigned that to the patch team. So consider and compare it to your manual approach where your security teams have to go through such a vast amount of data and spend a lot of time and effort in terms of prioritization and orchestrating them with the patch teams for remediation. So slightly extending that, now let us also look at another dashboard in Ivanti Neurons for RBVM. And let us try to take a slightly do-it-yourself approach now, okay? But before that, okay, so this is a prioritization dashboard, okay, as you can see, which actually shows how many findings are open, how many findings are closed, so that your security teams can focus on where the efforts are most required. As you can see here, again, it narrows down from the total number of findings to what is more important or of what is of high risk nature. So And also what you can do is using this quick interactions menu where I'm pointing to, you can even select the different asset types, a host or an application. So basically, when we talk about hosts, this is your IT infrastructure. Okay, all the host findings are related to your IT infrastructure, and remediation is the responsibility of the IT team here. And when we talk about applications, these are findings or vulnerabilities from your application stack, and fixes or remediation should happen typically are done by the development team. So that is on the asset types. Again, so we have two scoring metrics you can choose from. One is the VRR score and another is the severity. So severity, again, when we talk about severity, severity is nothing but it's the highest of the CVSS scores. So any finding in RBVM is associated with one or more CVEs or vulnerabilities. So when if you select severity, it takes into account the highest CVSS score. But we also have something called VRR score, which is a risk metric, which is Ivanti's patented risk metric, which not just takes into account the CVSS ratings as a base score, but also factors in the trending ransomware and the malware and exploit security research, all the contextual data, and comes up with a risk rating. Okay, I'll show you in a moment. So this is on, so you can select, you can even customize these dashboards in terms of what asset type you need and what scoring metric you need. Okay, so for now I'll select host and VRR and click on apply. So for now, if you can see, let me go with let me click on, for the demo purpose, I have clicked on the total number of open findings in my organization's environment. Okay, so there you go, you are seeing 955,000 total open findings. Okay, so obviously now I want to narrow it down. Okay, so so what we have in terms of filtering available is various filters and various system views that help you narrow down these vulnerabilities and help you narrow down what is high risk, which vulnerabilities pose the highest risk to your organization's security posture. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, so among these, if I see the first level of filter I'm going to apply is, if you see here, this bar is the KPIs. So I'm going to click on how many are the overdue findings among this total open findings. So of course, from a compliance point of view, in terms of SLA timelines, it's important I focus on the overdue findings, right? So that has brought it down to 791,000 findings. So after this, what I'm going to do is, we have readily available system views. For example, CISA KEVs. So we have a system view on CISA KEVs, which takes into account the latest recommendations in terms of CISA known exploitable vulnerabilities. If I apply this system view, it further narrows it down to all the findings in my environment which are associated with these KEVs. So you can see now I'm at 16K findings. So again, quickly on system views, most of your organization's vulnerability management requirements, a system view should be available. But if you don't find it, you can also use something called user views, and you can create a view that suits with your vulnerability management requirements. Okay, so both are available. So even you have one for Patch Tuesday. So every month there is a system view which is updated for the latest Patch Tuesday findings as well. So now beyond this, if I have to narrow it down more on the asset criticality, if I have to bring in this asset criticality to the picture, if you can see, there's a group by option here. I can group all the findings based on asset criticality. Asset criticality is nothing but how critical is the asset to my business operations, right? And now I'm going to pivot on those findings, as you can see here, which are most critical. So these are the findings which are associated with my most critical assets. So if you can see, we have narrowed it down to a significant extent. Okay, so but still, this is a handful for me to hand it over to the patch team. So let us apply a few more filters. Excuse me. So let us review the filtering criteria I have applied till now. So one is the CISA KV system view that helped me narrow down my vulnerabilities. And at the same time, I was able to only look at those findings which are beyond the due date assigned by my organization. And at the same time, I also applied asset criticality pivot, which gave me only those findings which are associated with my most critical assets. On top of that, I'm only seeing those which has trending threads, meaning there is a sense of urgency associated with this. So let me also see what are those findings which has patches. So if you apply this patch, so yeah, I think so we are at 314 findings now. So imagine where we started, total open findings 955K, and we were able to narrow this down to 314 findings. So now there are two ways. What I can do is, if I want to hand it over to my IT ops team, we have already seen how to add them to a patch group, but we also have connectors associated with ticketing systems. So for this demo, I'm going to use ITSM, Ivanti Neurons for ITSM. So I can even create tickets associated with all these findings. So there are 314 findings, 314 tickets will be created in my ITSM product, which then IT ops team will work on them and take them towards remediation. But we also have a feature recently introduced where you can even automate this whole process of the ticket creation. Let me just quickly show you that. So once you create a collection in your RBVM product, what you can do is you can enable automatic ticket creation. So yeah, again, there are options to assign these findings to specific users within the product. That can be done. And there are also options to assign them to patch or ITSM products, like you were seeing. Yeah, just a moment. Just give me a moment. So yeah, so this is how I can configure a specific collection for auto ticketing. So let us take, so collection is nothing but a grouping for findings. So this is a one-time setup which can be done. For example, I have selected a specific finding collection of findings, and I'm configuring now for auto ticketing using Ivanti Neurons for ITSM. So I can even determine whether I want any attachment along with the ticket that is going to be created on my ticketing system, which is what you can see, the format of the attachment. And that you can also configure the status sync settings between RBVM and ITSM in this case. So you can even determine or put in place an expiry date after which the auto ticketing will stop, and you can submit. So what this does is, whenever there are new findings associated to your collection, like in my case, what I did is any CISA KV finding, I want automatically tickets to be created. So there is no manual intervention required once this is done. Tomorrow, next month, next week, for every CISA KV finding, there is an automatic ticket generation that happens so that there is no oversight. That's about it. So with that, let us quickly go back and also have a look at the executive dashboard, okay? Because it's important. There are few metrics. So one more important metric in terms of risk prioritization is Ivanti's RS3 score. So what it does is it presents on a scale of 300 to 850, more like your credit score. What is the risk posed by your organization's asset inventory at an overall level? If you see here, the higher the score, the less risk it is. What it does is for example, just to show you the methodology, right? So it factors in 4 different aspects. One is the vulnerability risk rating, which we spoke about, which we talked about. Also, the asset criticality of the underlying assets, meaning the business criticality part, and also the accessibility, meaning whether it's an internal asset or an external asset, it factors in that as well. And also the vulnerability KB threat intelligence also is factored in, and this score is calculated. So what it gives is to executives the high level risk rating for your organization is showed. For example, in this case, we are at a slightly higher risk in this demo environment. So along with that, same, you have this prioritization funnel also. So if you see here again, same, starting from total open findings, if you see starting from 1.2 million approximately, this brings it down to 1006 actually. So this is the value RBVM brings into the vulnerability management process. So I think few more additional capabilities it's important. One is the ability to automate all these actions, okay, using playbooks. So whatever actions we have seen in host findings, application findings, right? Instead of doing them manually, that those can be automated using playbooks. This is a very powerful feature. So actions like adding a tag, assigning them to specific users within the product, changing the due dates, everything can be automated. So those automation abilities are present in the product. Let us just see an example here. Let me just create a playbook. Let me say tag critical assets. So I can even configure this to be run at any time of the day. Let us take end of the day. I want something to be run daily end of the day. Okay, so I have created this new playbook. So I'm going to open this. So every playbook runs on a set of rules. So I have to configure a rule for it. So let me say I want to apply a tag for this group of assets. So I'm going to pick a tag called most critical. And I need to pick a filter. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pick those systems which are running Windows operating system and which has ransomware related vulnerabilities on them. Okay. So what this will do, and I can even set the notification type by email or with specific messages so that the users receive it on their email inboxes, right? So for this, so I have created a playbook rule that can automatically apply the most critical tag to all the Windows computers which have ransomware vulnerabilities. I can submit. Okay. One sec, yeah. Tag ransomware assets, demo, submit. Yep. So, and it's, yeah, once I enable this rule, this comes into picture. So from now on, the filter gets automatically any new Windows system, even that is newly added to my organization's inventory, which is having a ransomware, this playbook will pick it up and apply this tag. So applying tag is just one of the actions. As you might have seen, there are a lot of other actions. Okay. So let me disable this to be able to edit this again. So as you can see, this is just one of apply tag is just one of the actions. There are more powerful actions like you can even remove the due date as in the which is related to the SLA. You can even update the business criticality. So in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up by quickly showing you a few more capabilities. Like for example, you have even workflows. So what we have seen in playbooks, similar capabilities, workflows are available. Meaning, if you want your findings to be set as false positives or to be set as already remediated or for risk acceptance. So these are specific outcomes you can even configure workflows. That's a very powerful feature available. And also we talked about auto ticketing, and just to round this off, it has various notification types, meaning for every action you can even configure these notifications. even for new ransomware findings. You can configure notifications where you can be alerted on email or in platform. Even for change in RS3 score for RS3 score for a group of assets, you can even set up a specific notification type. And just to round off this demo, last I'll show you the vulnerability KB database. This is an additional SKU, but whatever we discussed earlier, right? The main threat context in terms of what are those trending vulnerabilities, what are those OS top 10 CVE, the software weaknesses, top 10 software weaknesses, all these are available in vulnerability KB. Okay.